So we are moving on to new, not even new, but exciting topic, which is going to be stem cells. So stem cells, an impact of health, stem cell treatment on health and performance, because we know medicine advances extremely fast. And maybe you can break it down. Give you like a breakdown of an intro. What is stem cells? Where are they? How we use them? Is there anything like harmful about them? Uh, and literally break it down in how we came around finding them, because we both have come across people who are using stem cell treatment for very different reasons.
Mhm.
So what it is, how beneficial it is there anything that can be associated with something negative about them? What do we know now?
Yeah. So number one, let's just start with saying stem cells are naturally made in the body, right? And they are finite, right? In other words, there's a limited amount of stem cells that you are going to be able to elicit action from in your lifespan. Now, a lot of people don't know this, right? And some people might, right? And that is stem cells that you make are stored in body fat. So fat, that is crucial to understand, especially in like the fitness world and just trying to be healthy and whatnot. When you accumulate extra amount of body fat, whether that's acutely or from some reason, that's actually a potential future benefit, right? In one context, the context that you don't get rid of them through surgery, right? Because if you get rid of them through surgery, you are not just giving up the fat in those fat cells, you're giving up the stem cells in those fat cells as well, right? So when you go and have liposuction, they don't throw that fat away. Just so you know, they turn around and collect the stem cells from it and get paid again, right? They get paid by you having them remove it, and then they get paid once again when they deliver the stem cells from adipose tissue to stem cell treatment facilities and stuff like that. So that is the crux of where it's stored naturally on the body and how the body naturally takes those fat stem cells and puts them in a place where you are going to be able to hopefully use them for regeneration processes in a future time, right? So this works really, really well with it's not even an idea, the actual system on this planet, which is seasonal variance, right? Not everybody on the planet lives at the equator. So all mammals at different parts where there's strong cycles of sunlight and weak cycles of sunlight rely more heavily on stem cells because at a certain time of the year in there, you're going to elicit further fat gain. And that's almost always going to be leading into a weak sunlight cycle, aka winter, right? And so you end up accumulating some adipose tissue, and coincidentally, that adipose tissue is going to have information. Stem cells is one of them, but there's also leptin and other hormonal signalers in those fat cells, so that when the cycle of strong sun starts to come back, aka spring, you can actually regenerate tissues that have been broken down for an extended period of time in the absence of red light and strong UV light from winter time. So it's a molecular adaptation, it's a physics adaptation to a weak sunlight cycle. So that is how places or living in places with weak sunlight cycles actually helps you make your own stem cells at an accelerated rate and then turn around and use them for regeneration purposes when the sun comes back. So in theory, living in a place where there's four seasons or higher latitude, and the higher the latitude, you will run through stem cells at a faster pace from year to year than somebody that lives at the equator, right? So that is about all that we really need to say as far as like natural stem cells and how they work, or how they're accumulated, where they're accumulated, and how they're kind of set up to work in nature. Now, what is a stem cell, right? A stem cell is a undifferentiated cell. In other words, it's blank. It can be turned into just about anything else. It can be turned into heart tissue. It can be turned into tendon or ligament tissue. It can be turned into liver tissue, etc. So it's there to really help your whole body regenerate. Now, because the more you elicit damage or live in a place where you're exponentially using stem cells at a higher rate, you eventually end up with lower amounts of stem cells as you age. And this is where something like stem cell therapy can be extremely beneficial. I say can be because most therapies right now are just in the concept of almost like medicine, right? Where it's like, here, take this, or we give you this, and you're on your way, right? Like, just give it some time and they'll do their thing. That's kind of just hope. That essentially, right? You're basically paying a buttload of money for stem cells, and then you're hoping that they turn into the things that you want them to turn into or regenerate the body appropriately. Now, because of what I stated earlier, right, you can use stem cells at an accelerated rate with poor lifestyles or living in environments that expose you to extra damage, aka high electromagnetic fields is definitely one of the more modern ways to deplete stem cells, because you're chronically going to be inducing damage that then you need to make up with new cells, right? That's a thing. And that's also where cancers come in, right? If your stem cells are depleted, then your body is not going to want to go through apoptosis as often as it should, right? Because that's what cancer is cells that have not died or are not being told to die, because they have to be replaced. They are going to be replaced by stem cells to create the new cells, right? And so if you were running low on stem cells because you've been depleting them from decades of poor lifestyle or living in an environment that's not good for your biology, then you're essentially going to accelerate the risk of cancer, right? Now, stem cells, when you inject them, like I mentioned earlier, they need signals, the same signals that your normal endogenous stem cells would need. So I'm going to share a little screen here because this is probably step one where you need to understand this, right? Circadian clocks are found in stem cells for tissue regeneration and homeostasis. What does that mean, right? And all it means is this: clock genes, BMAL1 and clock, those are two genes, are found in front of every sequence of cells, right? All of them, including stem cells. Now, why would that need to be a thing? Because your stem cells and every cell is hooked up to a timing mechanism, a circadian rhythm, right? Circadian rhythm is not when you go to sleep and when you wake up. Circadian rhythm is how the body understands time to do specific actions for specific organ systems at specific times of the day. In other words, your liver is going to be way more active and not regenerating during the day when you're metabolizing food and exercising and being awake. Your liver is going to be doing liver things, right? It's going to be doing the action of the liver and keeping things clean. But at some point, the liver has to regenerate. When does that happen? When you sleep, right? And so forth, and with other organ systems, right? Like the pancreas, for example, should be taking a break while you sleep because you're not metabolizing and ingesting food while you sleep. So there are certain systems, organ systems, that do certain things at certain times of the day, and that cannot be avoided. So if you are taking stem cell therapy and you're hoping for certain stem cells to be integrated to a specific organ system that you're hoping to regenerate with stem cell therapy, you have to understand that those stem cells, those new stem cells that you just put into your body, need to have correct BMAL1 and clock signaling. Now, this goes back to my Solar Athlete page where I show you guys with very clear wording and clear graphics of clock and BMLA1 are controlled by light, right? You can actually move your circadian rhythm with artificial light forward and backward, and you can tune it appropriately with daylight, right? So understanding that all types of light, including light you can't see, like electromagnetic field from wireless devices and stuff like that, will all shift in mess with these clock genes, should also highlight to you that they will mess with your stem cells that you've gone through therapy for. So if you are doing stem cells, you should at least for the first 3 to 4 weeks after stem cell therapy, be very conscious of the type of lighting environment and the circadian interactors in your environment for the next few weeks if you're wanting the stem cells to be correctly coded and signaled to turn into the correct organ systems that you're trying to help with, right? Now, recently, they're using stem cells for all kinds of things, right? Most are going to be pretty familiar with like using stem cells for like knees and shoulders and tendons and ligaments and that sort of stuff. But there are stem cell therapies that are being targeted for immune system and things of that nature. And depending on the system will depend on kind of exactly the adjunct therapy or lifestyle that you're probably going to want to supplement when you do get stem cells. So let's just talk about the immune system, for example, right? If you're getting stem cells for an immune system response to help bolster your immune system because you have a crappy immune system, then the first thing you need to understand is that your immune system, your immune cells, your B cells and your T cells, they are tuned by two types of light, UVA and infrared, right? UVA tunes your B cells at the skin level because UVA can only penetrate that exact amount right into the B cell beds right after the skin. And that tunes the B cells to appropriately respond to stressors because they are being exercised, right? UVA and UVB are a stressor. And it goes right back to exercise science, right? A specific stressor imposes a specific response. And this specific stressor of UVA light on the B cells tells them, hey, it's essentially training them. It's essentially training them to respond to aggressively to certain outcomes in the immune system. Infrared light tunes the T cells in the gut, or the GOLT, right, which is right behind the gut. That's where most of your B or T cells are residing in, and that is tuned by infrared light, right? So your T cells are going to be the most immune active type of cells because that's where your gut is. That's where you're ingesting food. That's where possible bacteria can come into your body, et cetera, et cetera. So they are the ones that are tuned with infrared light, which makes sense because infrared light is present year round, no matter where you live, right? Even if you live in Iceland or the UK, you still get infrared light when you go outside because it penetrates.
When you go outside.
Exactly, when you go outside, right? Which brings me to my next, the real low-hanging fruit. If you were going to get stem cell therapy for just immune function, the thing you want to do is expose your gut and skin, as much of it as possible, to outside lighting environment, at least at 2 points in time during the day. The morning and at noon, right, would be the most crucial points in time during the day to tune the immune system. And by default, we'll start tuning the stem cells that you took for immune system response to bolster it.
Is there a time period after stem cell treatments that you would suggest to do that, and how long would that be the most beneficial? Let's say somebody who can afford a stem cell treatment probably can afford holiday.
Yeah, I would say any time is better than no time, right? So if you can afford a 2-week holiday after a stem cell treatment, I would say that is way better than just returning back to normal, right? Because you also have to understand, what did I say at the very beginning of this video? You deplete stem cells by your lifestyle and your environment, right? So if you are taking stem cell therapy, you are actually telling me that your lifestyle and your environment has been accelerating stem cell depletion naturally, right? So that's why I'm bringing this to the attention. I'm totally cool with stem cell therapy. It's very useful, and it can be even more useful if you understand that it's an environmental thing that needs to be the next step after the stem cell therapy. That's what's going to give you the biggest buck, or the bang for your buck, in the stem cell treatment. And I would say at a minimum 2 weeks. 2 weeks would be the minimum amount of time immediately after. And again, it doesn't have to be like the very next day, but within, you got stem cell therapy, within that week, you should probably make an effort to have scheduled some level of outside time, some kind of a holiday where you can actively get a lot of solar exposure, especially in the morning, especially in the middle of the day. Now, there's
just to follow up that if somebody hasn't watched our previous videos, you do that exposure without a sunscreen.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yes, yeah. That I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people will say they're doing that and then they'll be wearing a t-shirt or they'll
And
be
we both have seen that. We have seen the people who go, we tell them, hey, just go to Mexico, go to Spain, whatever. And they come back and their vitamin D3 is still tanked. And then you're like, okay, what did you do? Or what did you not do?
yeah, yeah, and it's almost always yeah, it's almost always clothing or sunscreen related, right? So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because just like clothing, sunscreen just is supposed to act just like clothing, right? It's a way to be naked without being naked, essentially, as far as the sun is concerned, which is one of the main regulators of the circadian rhythm, and all stem cells have clock and BML1 in front of them to tell them when they should be turning into certain organ systems and when they shouldn't. And then once they do turn into, just hypothetically, let's say that those stem cells start turning into B cells and T cells, then they are going to run on the B cell and T cell circadian rhythm cycle. In other words, they're going to be recycled at the certain times of day that those organ systems be recycled at. Another popular therapy is stem cell regeneration or stem cell therapy for regeneration of tendons and ligaments like knees and elbows and joints and stuff like that. Well, what do we know about those organ systems? Those organ systems do not get, how would I say, hydrated by actual blood vessels, right? There are no blood vessels in them, right? How are they making their hydration status? They're making it through the mitochondria in those tissues. The mitochondria are making the water there. And in previous videos, we've discussed in pretty good detail with pretty plain wording how the mitochondria makes water. And the way it makes it is through metabolism and infrared light, which is why infrared studies have now shown lots and lots of benefits for tendons and ligaments and tissue repair, is because it upregulates two things in mitochondria: ATP production, which is what everybody focuses on in the studies. But if you look at our videos, the byproduct of making a lot of ATP is a lot of water, a lot of metabolic water. So if you're getting stem cell therapy for tendons, ligaments, and joints and stuff like that, a lot of infrared therapy would be extremely beneficial, targeted at the joints that you're trying to repair, because it's going to accelerate the ATP signaling process of hydrating those tissues. And if there's stem cells there at that level, then you're essentially giving the stem cells lots of energetic possibilities to turn into those things and signaling it correctly, right? So those are
It's
just,
anecdotal as well that if somebody has issues with their joints, if we ask them to go outside after training session and wear shorter shorts that you expose your knees to sun, they usually tend to have less issues with inflammation in their knees, in their elbows, and things like that as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And inflammation is literally going right back to the mitochondrial, like inflammation. The way that I like to describe inflammation, because a lot of people think of it as just fluid retention, right? But inflammation is too many protons and not enough electrons, right? And so and what that tells us is that you're not making enough intracellular water. So it's trying to keep you hydrated by increasing inflammation, right? So that it can keep fluids in those areas. The way to not get inflammation and still be hydrated is by making sure that you're making plenty of, your mitochondria are making plenty of ATP. And the two ways that you can make ATP: with sunlight or infrared light, and food, right? But you're not going to be able to eat enough food to make up all of the ATP in your body. Like, that is another misconception from a biology book, right? That the ATP is what runs everything in the body, and then when you look at it, they're like, oh, well, the only place you can get that energy is from food. And that's not true. And that's where the light story comes in. If you did the math, you would have to eat half of your body weight in food every day to make enough ATP to run our big ass brains, right? Because 30% of our energy is going to our brain. That's just our brain, right? That's why other animals tend to spend a lot of time eating all day long, is because they haven't mastered how to collect sunlight to make up the deficit of large amounts of ATP needed for energetics.
I'm pretty sure gorillas was calculated up to 80 or 88% of their life they eat.
Yeah, yeah, because where is all of their melanin? It's on the outside of their body,
Mm.
right? We are the species that took melanin and put it inside of our body. So now we can collect energy internally for cellular processes, right? And so that makes it so that a little bit of sunlight creates a lot of ATP, right?
Right.
So now you've essentially made up the difference. Now you can spend less time eating and more time thinking and more and developing a bigger and bigger brain, right? So we're getting a little bit off topic there, but again, this goes back to how crucial sunlight is to stem cells, because all of your cells at some point in time were a stem cell, right? So that's what we're talking about. When you get stem cell therapy, you're essentially trying to reverse the aging process by supplying fresh blank cells. Those fresh blank cells need instructions. You cannot give those instructions very clearly if your environment is poor.
Mm. I was nearly trying to get you sidetracked as well. Is this why the reason why the leanest people are usually the weakest and the most the least equipped to fight off any illnesses?
Yeah, yeah, there is something to that, right? The leaner you are, right? If you get injured significantly enough, or in some kind of infection or something like that, yeah, most people will just say your immune system is underperforming when you're really, really lean. That's just an easy way to say you have very little reserves for combating a stressful situation or a life-threatening situation for several reasons, but one of them being this stem cell reason, right? You just don't have stem cells around to actively regenerate tissues at an accelerated rate if you needed to. So I'm
Do
almost kind of saying that in a
stem cells
bad,
do we have, and do we know which ones are the best to be used?
yeah, yeah. So again, you can get stem cells. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, right? Because there are some stem cell therapies that are approved in the US where you can go in and they can collect your stem cells from your own adipose tissue, but you're not gaining anything there, because you already made those stem cells. They're just taking them and just isolating them and then injecting them back into you. You're still going to run a stem cell deficit at that point, and the stem cells still might not work because of everything that I just said before, right? If you don't go out of your way to change your environment a little bit to target the regeneration tissue that you're or the tissue you're trying to regenerate, you may end up with nothing anyway, and you still depleted your own stem cells. So those types of therapies, I would just say, probably better off saving your money and maybe go, save it for a little bit longer and go with a real therapy, where a real therapy is exogenous stem cells, right? Now, those exogenous stem cells can also come from other people's body fat, or those tend to be more in the regeneration of skin, regeneration of tendons and ligaments. They tend to work fairly okay with that. But if you're trying to regenerate like an actual organ or an organ system, like your immune system and stuff like that, then you're probably going to want stem cells that come from placenta or embryos. Now, those types of therapies are not allowed in the US. So you're going to need to do those outside of that country. And there are countries that are allowing those types of things. And those would be the ones that have the most potent stem cells. In other words, they're the freshest, right? Because let's just talk about this from an age standpoint, right? You are born with the stem cells you're going to have for the finite amount of time that you're on this planet. As you get older, those stem cells also age, right? So even though you still have stem cells when you're 60, though when those stem cells become activated and turn into things, they're still going to have that age marker, right? So their mitochondria are going to be functioning at a lower rate. Whereas if you get stem cells from an embryo or a placenta, those are very fresh stem cells in terms of age, which means their mitochondrial redox is the technical term, but basically the mitochondria's ability to be efficient is very high, right?
So before you carry on, about a little bit about ethical perspective on this, because embryos obviously, hey, what the hell?
Yeah.
Uh, does this happening through abortions, or what's happening? And is placenta useful as well when somebody has given birth, because they're going to throw it out anyway? So what's
Yeah, so depending on the country, those are the policies of the country, right? Like it would be hard for me to say that all placenta is collected, as placenta was at a hospital. Some of it could be from from abortions and things of that nature. Same thing with embryos, and that is specific to the laws in that country, which is why you're not going to find that stuff in America. I don't necessarily have ethical qualms with that, right? If it's a life-saving therapy and you know what you're doing and you have access to it, you're going to do it anyway, right? So I is there a black market for this? Yeah, probably, right? So now you're getting into a lot more sketchier things, and that there is that, right? Like, I'm not going to say that this is a place in medicine or science that's not subject to black market pressures and stuff like that.
I don't remember the precise numbers, but last time I looked up, I probably need to refresh my memory, but from placenta alone, they can make like million or whatever. That was obscene a number of treatments
Stem
they
cells.
could possibly do.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm looking up, like, okay, this is, I know that a lot of countries will not allow this to happen, but is there a way of doing it ethically, which
Yeah,
probably
there could be, right? Like, so a placenta, for example, right? If you literally gave birth to your child and they're going to throw it away anyway, and you're not going to do anything, right? Like, some people, especially in the homeopathic and midwife type, they save that, right? They save that because
I know people who have dried it out and then just
yeah,
supplement to
yeah,
because
use it to make their own supplements. Yeah, that is a real thing, right? All animals, just so everybody understands, all mammals eat the placenta after birth, right? There is a reason to supplement it, right? But if you're not going to do that type of stuff, I don't see a reason why you couldn't donate it to a particular, business that's going to collect, placenta from people that want to give it away, right? That would be a very ethical way to go about things. We'll see if that actually ends up happening on how that works, but that would be the most ethical way, in my opinion, right?
So what are the future prospects for this?
Say that one more time.
What could be the future prospects for this? Do we know everything what we can possibly do with it? Because you mentioned there are joint treatments, tendon.
Well, I mean, technically, right?
What else can be done with this, and what are we missing out in sense of, you mentioned red light therapy and maybe some stuff. Maybe there is some other treatments that can be paired with this to make it even more efficient. What's happening there? What do we see in the future?
Yeah, so really the sky's the limit, and I'm not really joking, right? Like, when I say that, because all stem cells can regenerate mostly all tissue. The only thing that I don't believe that they've been able to regenerate is actual brain tissue yet. That doesn't mean that we won't find what that is. But here's another little thing I'm going to share, which is whole tooth regeneration as a future dental treatment, right? And this was in 2015, and this was done with stem cells, right? Stem cells and the correct cytokine signaling. Cytokines are things that are displayed into the blood when you have a stressor. What kind of stressor did they use in here? They used UVA light, 380 nanometer UVA light. And just so people are clear, 380 nanometer light signals mitochondria for anabolism, right? It signals mTOR, right? So what they did is they injected stem cells into these people's mouths and signaled it to create the right cytokines. And the way they signal it was with 380 nanometer light, right? And so they regenerated a whole tooth from a pull-up. So there was no tooth in the cavity, and then made a new tooth with the injection of stem cells locally there, and then an adjunct of 380 nanometer light. So therapies like this is what's going to be coming in the future in terms of stem cells, if we stop looking at like more medications to go along with the stem cells and start looking at what are the signals that the cell needs to actually proliferate and get the right instructions to turn into things. Right. And almost all of that is going to be light induced. And just so that people get it a little bit more, because a lot more people might be familiar with this terminology, I'm going to say it a different way. And that is frequencies. Light is a frequency, right? And specific frequencies of light, in this case, 380 nanometers is a specific frequency of light, makes specific outcomes happen in biology. We know this from pulsing electromagnetic fields, right? There's pulse electromagnetic field therapy devices, where if we pulse things at 15 hertz, we know that it stimulates bones, tendons, and ligaments to regenerate, right? If we pulse things at 40 hertz, that stimulates other things to happen. So specific frequencies of cell regeneration paired with stem cells are going to be the next thing that people should be looking into. You can already probably hack this yourself, right? Like I literally just showed you one way that you could hack this. If you have access to stem cell therapy and you know that you need bone and tendon and ligament regeneration, pairing some pulsed electromagnetic fields at 15 hertz along with proper sunlight to make sure that those tissues stay hydrated, that's a winning combination for regenerating tendons and ligaments with stem cell therapy combination, right? That's a very simple hack.
My physio has been doing this for like 10, 15 years, and he was kind of way ahead of everyone else. And now he's using this MBST equipment where he literally can get somebody in where his cartilage completely destroyed in his knee, and then 10 treatments, brand new. And you're like, how the hell do these things happen? But
Yeah.
you explain, this is what's happening there.
Yeah. And so that is the future of these types of treatments. That is the
You
future.
also mentioned that we probably can't recover like brain matter or whatnot. Can we use stem cells to improve cognitive abilities though, in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, because you won't be able to well, we have, that's what I'm saying. Like, the only reason why we haven't is probably because people haven't been smart enough's not the right way to say it, but we haven't discovered the right frequencies, the right signaling process to make brain matter, right? Do I think that'll probably happen? Probably. And do I think that somebody's already kind of on that path? Yeah, probably. But currently, yeah, you could regenerate neurons, right? You could regenerate parts of the nervous system in the brain. You just wouldn't be able to currently be able to regenerate brain matter. So things like dementia, Alzheimer's, things of that nature could probably be helped with stem cells. But with those types of diseases, right, and we've highlighted some of those diseases in our previous videos, those types of diseases are more subject to their depleting stem cells and hormones and neurotransmitters in the brain specifically because of too many electromagnetic fields and artificial light at night. So one of the key concepts with those types of neuronal problems is the removal of that environment while you get stem cell therapy and stimulating
so changing the lifestyle. And we have also discussed in previous videos how you can do that. You know what I do when I visit people I work with, like, hey, this is how your bedroom is affecting you. This is how, like, yeah, it's we can do so many things now, and it's crazy that so little is talked about it.
Yeah. And just so that we can kind of wrap up a little bit on other treatments, right? There is also these treatments right here, right? So this treatment is stem cell treatment for chronic back pain, right? To potentially avoid surgery. They're literally, you see right here, they're injecting stem cells in the back here, and then they are infusing light into the stem cell therapy treatment. This is UVA light right here, and this over here on the other side is infrared light, right? They're literally using infusions of stem cell with lights because they know certain lights signal certain outcomes for the stem cells. This is not unknown. This therapy.
But blue light reminds me what my mom used to do when I was a little kid when I got sick. She had this like blue light that it was very popular in Soviet Union, and so, and then next day you wake up, you, oh, I feel great.
Yeah. And again, it's signaling immune system. This is signaling certain stem cells to signal to become other things and things of that nature. This was back in 2018. This was in Bangkok. It's offered in Bangkok. And again, this is not in the US because of the types of stem cells that they're using for this treatment, but they're signaling the stem cells correctly with the correct light frequencies to get the right outcomes, right? So this is not new science. This is stuff that some people know about and are very aware about. And so it just highlights kind of like everything in the medical and supplement world, where everybody says that they have the next best thing, but they're always missing a piece of the puzzle, right? Like stem cell treatments are very popular. You can just Google it and you'll find 100 places that you can go. It's not just about the stem cells. It's about the quality of the stem cells. We talked about that. And also, what do you do after the stem cell treatment matters.
it's same like with training and nutrition and whatnot. What's best training plan? What's best nutrition? And this is that. There isn't one. It's like, let's see what would fit you the best at this very point.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Mm-hmm.
we can get you at certain place where you want to be, but you and somebody next to you might have completely different results from same exact strategy because your circumstances, how you live your life day to day are completely different.
Correct. Correct. Yep. Yep. It happens just like that for just about everything, and stem cells is no exception. They're not miracle, but they are pretty damn close, especially if you know what you're doing and can signal them correctly, or go to a place where they know about these things and can signal them for you correctly.
Yeah, so just to get kind of try to get some kind of summary out of this is that stem cells are probably one of the greatest things you could come across if you can, but make sure you understand what are you trying to achieve and that your follow-up treatments are enhancing what you're trying to do. Because just because you got a stem cell treatment does not necessarily mean you're going to be at your best for as long as you can be if you are not changing your lifestyle and behavior when you go back into your usual routine.
Correct, correct. Even I will highlight this, even to the point where you can get stem cell therapy and make the stem cells die, right? So a perfect example would be you live next to a power station or a cell phone tower and you have a lot of joint problems. You go get stem cell therapy, nothing improves. Why didn't it improve? Because all of those stem cells got killed because of the electromagnetic forces that are acting upon your body where you live, right? So that's why I say when you have a stem cell problem, the very first place you need to go look is your environment. And then once you fix the environment, getting stem cell therapy can bring you back to 100%, right? That's a crucial thing that I want that people need to understand. A stem cell problem tells you there is an environmental problem, without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, David. Thanks for your time as usual. It's been great content, and I'll speak to you next video.
Awesome. Thank you very much.